The Kerry County Board Chairman, Tim Murphy, is with us this morning. Tim, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Joe.
I'd say, can we park yesterday's announcement just for 1 second? I wanted to kind of hear about the difficulties that you guys have had before we get to the actual layering on of what yesterday's announcement is going to mean for you on a day-to-day basis. What was the current scenario in terms of where you were this year versus how you had been on previous years, and what kind of difficulties were the Kerry County Board experiencing at the moment?
Yeah, so there's a myriad of difficulties, I suppose, Joe, really, in terms of when COVID hit in March and the shutdown. Obviously, the immediate effect was on our clubs. The fact that they couldn't open, the fact that they couldn't even open walkways had a huge effect, I think, on all the clubs in the county. From a Kerry County Board point of view, there was very little actually happening at playing level, at fixtures level. In fact, all our time and resources was going into being part of the initiative to deal with COVID-19, along with the HSE and the Gardaí, and all our clubs played a huge part in that, over the course of March, April, and May, and continue to do so. So, as an example to compare this year and last year, there's actually no comparison. And I suppose if we come on then and we bring ourselves up to when clubs were allowed to reopen, the restriction of numbers in going to games was it put massive pressure on club secretaries and club chairpersons and club officers as a whole, because obviously the 200 limit put pressure on people that wasn't. We actually we instigated an e-ticketing system, George, this year, for the clubs, and we ran it on behalf of the clubs, just in terms of contact tracing and in an effort to assist our clubs in as far as we could. And that actually worked quite well. But even if we cast our mind back to maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were part of a collective lobbying of the government, which we felt was reasonable at the time, to increase the 200 to 300 and to increase the 200 to 500 in the bigger grounds. And, we felt as an association we put forward a very credible, coherent plan around that. And unfortunately, that didn't materialise at the time. And that brings us up to yesterday, then, where now we're in limbo insofar as the detail of what's been announced yesterday still has to be dealt with, and we're waiting for that. And I know Croke Park obviously has issued a statement, as you've been discussing. So it's been a very difficult year for everyone. But as an organisation, I think it needs to be said, George, that the GAA have played their part in every sense of the word at a community level, in terms of adhering to the protocols, to best practice. Our clubs have been exemplary all over the country, and I can say that without fear of contradiction. I was at 2 hurling games last season, two of our county hurling championships, one on Friday night, one on Saturday. I was at an under-10s match on Sunday morning, an under-12s match on Sunday evening, 3 under-14 games in the last 3 Wednesday nights, all in different venues. And I can say without fear of contradiction that the clubs were exemplary in how they ran their affairs. Everything was adhered to. Social distancing was adhered to. And, from our experience, certainly in Kerry would suggest that the GAA have played their part in no small way in I suppose, in making sure that all the guidelines were adhered to, and nonetheless we were able to play the games, in our view, in a very safe manner.
Tim, I've got to say, personally, I'm not in favour of a lot of the decisions that have been made over the last 24, 48 hours, and I find them baffling, and I find them a bit confusing, and I'm sure a lot of people out there are trying to grapple with them. Just for a moment, to play devil's advocate and to bring you what Philip Nolan has been saying on News Talk Breakfast this morning. He's obviously part of NEFIT. He says that there is empirical evidence here and internationally that there are cases from gathering at events. There is data that people are gathering after matches, travelling together, and that's the issue. So in essence, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit there, in essence, it's not the organisation of the games themselves, it's the getting to and from that is the issue. So it's not that any organisation has been remiss in their duties or the COVID officers haven't been doing their jobs. It's just human nature that we're social animals, that on our way to and afterwards we tend to be a bit lax in the rules. So they're saying it's essentially coming down to personal responsibility.
Yeah, I get that, and I heard your programme last night in relation to that as well, Joe. What I would say about that is certainly, and I'm only talking about it from a Kerry perspective. All the games I've mentioned to you in terms, particularly at juvenile level, all the kids came individually in cars with their parents. They attended the game. They adhered to social distancing within the different venues around the county. I think what the GAA have done is, I think what you said, and far be it for me to contradict somebody in Neffet in relation to this. I'm certainly not doing that at all, George. But what I think it's an awful lot more palatable for an association to accept a decision if there's evidence provided to say, yeah, that's a reasoned decision and we can accept that. But at the moment, it would appear the decision is made and we don't have any, supporting evidence at this point in time. I'm not saying that it's not there, but I think the GAA are well within their rights, and that to be fair, I think if that evidence is there, we should have sight of it, and I think people would be an awful lot more accepting of the decision that was made yesterday if that evidence was present. But at the moment, all the anecdotal evidence that we see on the ground, observations in the main would suggest that people do take personal responsibility in the GAA, and that they do adhere to the principles of social distancing and all the other the myriad of items that have been announced through Neffet and through the government. And I think as an organisation, we've conveyed that to all our members. And at the outset of all this, George, we were certainly of the view that it was best practice, personal responsibility, and at all times people would have to take personal responsibility for their actions. And that's the piece that I think is challenging for people to accept, that it would appear at this point in time, looking at it from a GAA perspective, that that evidence is on the ground it would suggest that we are in the main, I would say, very compliant. So my view on this would be, and it would be the board's view, I think, that if that evidence is provided by Neffet, that that behaviour is going on and contributing to the transmission of COVID, that would be an awful lot more palatable and easier to accept for members of the association. But
so it's a communication issue, Tim, in one respect. If they have the evidence, and so community transmission has apparently doubled in the last 2 weeks, is something else that Philip Nolan has said this morning. So you can see why they're getting to a scenario where they need to make some decisions. Ultimately, it's the government who end up implementing this, by the way. So the government could always say, well, look, for example, and you guys cancelled under 14 matches last night. Is that correct? We did, because on the basis, George, that we didn't know what the detail of it was. Like, if you take that to the nth degree, what would actually happen is you could have 40 cars arriving with 20 players on each team, and the kids going in to play the games, and 40 parents congregating outside the field. So it serves the exact opposite purpose to what it was intended. And also, the kids are going back to school next week. Most schools are only beginning to issue guidelines right now, but there isn't joined up thinking around this at all, Tim, and I can completely see why you're frustrated about it. Yeah, that's the issue, and I suppose the other issue, George, that every county board, and I've been in contact with most counties, is when a decision is made, it's instantaneous. There's no lead in. So, for example, that decision was made yesterday. If every county had a few days, if the government had communicated with Croke Park in advance, and that there was a plan initiated around this. Okay, this is what's happening, and that we had even 2 days or 3 days to implement it. It would have made a huge difference. But I suppose the difficulties we have, and look, I do accept that it's an evolving situation and it's ever changing, and decisions are made on the hoof, so to speak. We get that, but I just think the GAA have played a huge part in fighting this COVID-19 virus in every respect, and all we're asking for is that we'd get that level of information, maybe in a more timely fashion, to allow us to deal with it. And to be fair to our clubs, to be fair to
our people on the ground who, at the end of the day, Joe, are all voluntary people and all volunteers.
Tim, we were listening to a bit of John Horan from May at the top of the show there, and about how he was really against the idea of an inter-county championship happening without fans present at grounds. It's now looking like if an inter-county championship is going to happen, the only way it is going to happen is without fans at grounds. From what you've experienced in a microcosm in Kerry over the last few months, are things like streaming and rights and the revenues that come from that, will that make it a worthwhile exercise for this to go ahead? Because I'm sure you're well aware of the cost of putting Kerry into a championship in both codes.
Totally. I would say if you take the club scene first, certainly the streaming has gone exceptionally well. It was our first experience as such of streaming games to any sort of a level. So it's gone very well, and it's been received very well. So I think the fact that we're able to do so under the current circumstances is fantastic, and we're able to get the games out to people that would otherwise be travelling to the games. I think the challenge for inter-county is twofold. First of all, I think there's a whole area of players and the health issue, which I think will take guidance from NEFIT and obviously the government on that. But the second issue then is obviously the financial nature of inter-county, and when you take 30 or 26 counties in our case in the Republic and the six in Northern Ireland, and the cost of preparing those 32 teams relative to the cost of to what the TV rights may bring in, that exercise needs to be done, Joe, I think. But I think for the betterment of society and to give people hope, I think it would be very important, in our opinion, for the inter-county scene to continue, albeit behind closed doors, but at least people could actually watch it on TV. And I do hope that that does happen. But again, I think in many ways, George, this is outside of the GAA's control, because it'll be determined by factors that we don't have control over. So what we're trying to do is control what we can control, and it's up to others then to decide. Yeah, is that a good course to take, and is it a safe course to take? And I would imagine that decision will be made certainly in the next fortnight, or I think it'll have to be made the first week in September in advance of any inter-county training resuming.
Okay, so we're facing into a very critical juncture. Tim, you've been very good with your time this morning. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Joe.